Good afternoon, and welcome to our session, California Subject Matter Projects Leading by Design. My name is Nina Moore. I'm the Executive Director of Diversity and Engagement in the University of California Office of the President and Statewide Executive Director of the California Subject Matter Projects, and you'll hear us refer to that as CSMP throughout this session. I'm going to introduce you to our team in a minute, but I also wanted to let you know that I'll give you a brief overview of the subject matter projects. We'll talk with you about teacher leadership and what it means. And then you'll hear from 4 of our projects about what teacher leadership development looks like on the ground and in the different content areas. And we're going to share one example of a district partnership that we have with a local district. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So we have some folders for this session, so I think everybody got them, and I'll tell you in a minute what's in there. But before we start, I'm just curious, how many people in here are teachers? Nice. Thank you for all you do. Are there any district people in here? Welcome. And County Office of Education people? How about universities, community college, 4-year? Great. And I'm sure there's some others that I missed, but we just want to welcome you. We just wanted a sense of who is in the room, and actually you represent a lot of what we do in terms of working with K-12 and post-secondary education. First I'll introduce you to our team, and it is a team, as you can see. They were worried that there were so many of us we'd have a problem switching microphones and getting this recorded, but obviously we'll work that out. So this is Duarte Silva. He's the Executive Director of our World Language Project. So everybody are going to be executive directors as I move down the line. Nancy McTighe is a History Social Science Executive Director. Jane Marlink is our Writing Project Executive Director. Kendall Brown is the Mathematics Project Executive Director. Emily Schell is International Studies Executive Director. And Deborah Costa Hernandez is our Reading and Literature Project Executive Director. Maria Samani is our Science Project Executive Director. Diane Wilson-Graham is our Physical Education and Health Project Executive Director, and Christine Alexander is our Arts Project Director. And so you can see every content area is represented on the stage. And at the far end is a special guest we have with us today, Jacqueline White, who's the Director of Arts and Career Education at the Twin Rivers Unified School District. So we're gonna run through this pretty quickly, and hopefully have time for questions at the end. So I wanted you to just be aware, in your folders you have, on the left side there's a description of this session. There's an example of leadership development work from all 9 of the projects, and contact information. And on the other side there's a kind of program insert and a deeper description about each of the projects on the other side. And in your summit meeting folder, you'll find a brochure about subject matter projects. It looks like this. It looks like the folder. And this gives you a little bit more detailed information about who we are and what we do. So who is CSMP and what do we do? The CSMP is a statewide network of 9 discipline-specific professional development projects. And we have almost 90 regional sites across the state. Our intensive professional learning programs are focused on and organized around building teacher content knowledge, enhancing classroom instruction, and ensuring and developing teacher leadership. And it's all in the service of ensuring that all students have access to opportunities to learn and gain the necessary academic and disciplinary content and literacy skills that they need to succeed in college and their chosen careers. The programs are collaboratively designed by K-12 educators and university faculty in the disciplines. And they're really tailored to meet the specific needs of teachers and districts and schools in your local context. And we do have some what we call signature programs in each of the projects that have already been developed, but even those are tailored and tweaked to meet local needs. So all of our programs are also research-based and aligned with the current state-adopted standards. So that includes the Common Core, Next Generation Science Standards, ELD, CTE standards, and all of the content standards in each of the different disciplines. We focus on educational equity and access and promote student-centered teaching practices. So I mentioned that we are statewide, and so we're able to reach many educators and schools across the state, and we just have a few numbers for you to give you a sense of our reach and how we can help serve all of the school districts in the state. So we serve an average of about 40,000 educators each year in about 10,000 schools. And when we had API, about half of the schools we served were considered low performing, in the API 1 through 5. We have about 2,000 professional development programs a year. And I love this statistic that we actually reach educators in 57 of the 58 counties. So is anybody here from Alpine County? Okay, so that's the only county in California that we haven't reached yet, but we're going to work on that. That's our goal that's my commitment in 2016 is to find some educators in Alpine County. So I'd like to now turn this over to my colleague, Duarte Silva, and he's going to talk with you and with each other about what do we mean by teacher leadership.
Hola, ni hao. No response? Is this multilingual California? Well, I have the pleasure this afternoon to lead you in a couple of activities, or one activity, that is designed to tap into your prior learning. We know that you bring a lot to this context in terms of teacher leadership. Some of you are teachers. We're so pleased to have so many teachers here. Some of you are in charge of providing professional learning opportunities for teachers. So what we would like to do is do a think, pair, share. I don't think I need to explain the activity because most of us probably employ it in our classrooms. But it gives you the opportunity to think about the whole concept of teacher leadership. It's a concept, it's a practice, and there's a question right there, and I would like for you to individually to reflect, think about this question. What are the key characteristics that exemplify a teacher leader? Also think about this in a context over time. One of the models of the Subject Matter Project is that we work with teachers over time, and we know that when teachers come into sort of that arena of teacher leadership development, they evolve over time. So think about that whole concept, how it might evolve over time, and also includes continuous learning for both the teacher and students, because it's a continuum of learning. And we all always consider ourselves first as learners, teachers, and leaders. All the time we play those roles simultaneously. So I'm going to give you about 90 seconds for you to think about this. Use your best thinking skills if you need to write it down. The key characteristics that describe, teacher leadership in your mind, or just think about it. Then I'm going to ask you to come together and discuss it in pairs or trios, and then to share out. We have 2 microphones at the side. Fair enough? Let's go for about 90 minutes and think about this concept. 90 seconds, not minutes. Ooh, I could take the whole 90 minutes. Okay, now find yourself a pair or a trio, whatever makes best sense, wherever you're sitting, and discuss your thoughts with your colleagues for another 90 seconds or so. Okay, bring your conversations to a closure. Here. I am deliberating here if I should have the shout-outs in Chinese or Japanese. What do you think? See, it's going to be all easy. It's in English. Now, we have 2 microphones here, and we would like to have you share out some of your thoughts from your conversations. Any volunteers? Some of the concepts, character? Yeah, there's one right next to you here. Okay. You want to share out? Sure.
Sure. We said curiosity was a big one.
Curious about learning?
Curious about learning, about growing professionally was really important for teacher leaders.
Mm-hmm. Any other thought from this side of the room? Any hands going up? Don't be shy. Go ahead.
Patient with adults.
Patient with adults. It's different working with adults rather than your students in your classroom. Any other thoughts? Bill?
Well, they have to know something about the subjects being taught.
Absolutely.
And they have to know how kids either have a hard time or how to check if the student's getting, and they have to be able to work with teachers and have that ability to
Absolutely.
build a team, actually.
How do you negotiate that content for different students?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts in the back of the room? We don't want you to be reluctant learners back there. We want to make sure you participate here. Okay? There's a hand right there.
We said reflective, consistent.
Absolutely.
It's not good to be wishy-washy. And I was talking about just really having that constructivist approach, that it's student-centered.
Building those learning communities where everyone contributes. Harvesting the knowledge and contributions of everyone. Okay? Anybody else? Right up front here.
I think it's important for them to have credibility with their peers by having proven themselves as an exemplary teacher.
Absolutely. Develop that credibility and confidence that they need, both in the subject area and the practice. Yes?
We came up with quite a few things. We looked at ongoing development and collaboration in their learning communities and research, applying best practices and sharing those, collaborating when they can, autonomously, not necessarily when it's scheduled, and good communication and being flexible. Let's see, differentiation, being able to do that, differentiate their instruction and being, that's it.
Way back there. Okay, go
I
ahead.
think being able to use assessment to inform instruction is really important, and also the ability to understand the varying needs that are in their classroom and make appropriate accommodations for students who need it.
Making meaning of everything that you see and observe in the classroom. One last thought? We have time for one more? Okay, go ahead. Polly?
I think a teacher who examines what and how learning takes place or not.
The whole
daily.
reflective process, becoming a reflective practitioner. I think that you have pretty much captured a lot of the concepts we are going to go into and be discussing with you for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As Nita said, my name is Nancy McTighe from the California History Social Science Project. And I'm going to talk today just a little bit about what we started to talk about. And although we represent 9 different projects, 9 different disciplines, we share many things in common. It's particularly about how you define that teacher leadership. So teacher leadership is a core function of the California subject matter projects. Since our inception, we've worked with individual teachers to develop their skills within their own particular discipline and then prepare and support them to share those skills with their colleagues. Our approach is organized into 3 key activities. We identify potential leaders, we develop their content and pedagogical skills, and we sustain their leadership through a community of practice dedicated to student learning and literacy. Embedded within each of these components is an emphasis on the factors that we believe are most likely to affect teachers' ability to be effective. We pay attention to their context, where they teach, the resources they have or don't at their disposal, and the needs of their individual students. We support the continued deepening of their content knowledge, and most importantly, that content is translated, how that content is translated to their students. Finally, we dedicate significant time, research, and effort to improve teachers' ability to improve student fluency in English and academic language development. To give you a better sense of what these priorities mean in practice, my colleagues will next share stories of individual teachers who have participated in CSMP professional development programs, teachers like the ones that you saw when you were walking in. You'll see how we identify, develop, and sustain these teachers. You'll hear how context, content, and literacy drive and inform their leadership journey. So for example, I put this picture up here on purpose. These are two of my favorite people that work in the California History Project. The woman on the left is an elementary school teacher, a 5th grade teacher from Long Beach Unified named Crystal Cheek. And the man on the right is Alan Taylor, who's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes in history and used to be at my university, the University of California at Davis. The reason I put this on there is that one of Crystal's lessons that she shared with teachers, I went to an institute this summer, is she took very carefully selected excerpts from Alan's book, American Colonies, and provided them for her 5th graders so that they got the latest historiography, and then she provided support for them for students to understand, obviously very difficult text. It wasn't the whole book, it wasn't overwhelming, but it was a way to show how student literacy, content development work together, and how a community of K through 16 can work together to support student learning. And along with my colleagues, you'll hear how the CSMP model of teacher leadership is fluid and flexible, ranging from practicing teachers who lead from within their classrooms by engaging their colleagues in substantive discussions, to school leaders who strategically guide cross-disciplinary and grade-level efforts, to district leaders who implement and assess broad-based instructional reform. So to get started on that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Emily Schell, who will introduce our next presenters.
All right, thank you. So each of us could speak at length about teacher leadership, and instead we've decided to highlight some examples of what that teacher leadership looks like across 4 of our subject matter projects. So to kick us off, we have Jane Marlink from the California Writing Project, who's going to showcase through this vignette much of what you've already identified as teacher leadership.
Hello, hello. It's the after lunch hour, but you sound like you're awake, and I'm going to make sure you are. If you really paid attention to Linda Darling Hammond toward the end, what I'm going to describe to you actually will tick off almost everything she went through as a marker of sustained, effective professional learning. And I know my colleagues, it will be exactly the same. But I'd like to start with just a little bit, a sentence out of Greatness by Design on page 50. Lois Brown Easton argues that the most powerful learning occurs through active learning opportunities embedded in teachers' work, which begin with teachers' assessments of what their students need. Where was that assessment? And subsequently what teachers identify as areas for their own learning. This is an assessment story. This is a teacher leadership story that's a team of teachers. And I'm going to be a little annoying partly as I tell this story. I'm warning you in advance, okay? So, the prequel. Dum, 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 dum. Who's seen the movie? Okay, the prequel. There is a prequel. So if you read the leadership brief that you'll find in your folder, you'll find that the core leadership activity of the Writing Project is what we call an intensive invitational summer institute in the teaching of writing. And it's where folks dig deep into their own teaching practices, especially their questions. Why is this working? Why is this not working? They read research, they write, so that they actually learn what their students are experiencing. And they learn to take a hard look at student writing. Because student writing is where, for us, context, content, strength, and need come together. If you're going to backwards design and backwards map, you've got to start with the student writing and figure out what went right and what didn't. So, what you see here are pictures partly of the prequel. The woman right near the front with a highlighter and a big hefty stack of student work is Nancy Harry. Went through the Leadership Institute for the Central California Writing Project. Longtime leader, moved to the Monterey Peninsula School District. Big concern about underprepared kids going to college. and was a part of the CWP statewide program called Improving Students' Analytical Writing, which is all about how do we prepare college-ready writers, learners, readers, especially in marginalized places, English learners, students who haven't gotten the support, who've never been invited into an AP classroom. So there's Nancy. Next to her is a county office leader from Santa Cruz County Office. In the back, kind of, is Margot Kipps, a teacher at a high school, who has the same history as Nancy. But if you look down on the right-hand side, Teresa Rainey in the orange did the leadership program and then went from there with Lakeview, her school, Lakeview Middle School, and worked really hard on anticipating the Common Core. In the middle, Marvelyn Quiros followed the same kind of path, only she's an EL specialist and a reading specialist. Why the prequel? The wonderful part of this story, which is going to turn over to be the Pajaro Valley Unified School District story in a minute, is that the Central California Writing Project had 18 teacher leaders in place with an extensive, some of them a 20-year leadership development history focused on improving the writing of underprepared students, especially for college going. Huge concern in the Pajaro district. They were already teaching in Pajaro Valley schools, or they were partnering with Pajaro Valley Stories. So the prequel makes sense? Yes? Okay. Because here comes the story. The central district concern, panic in truth, was that the Common Core was coming. And what in the world are we going to do? And are we prepared? And we don't have enough kids going to college anyway, and this college readiness issue is really important to us, and we need help. Guess who stepped up and said, I think we know where we can go? Those teacher leaders already working in their schools, because they didn't want to go outside to do work. They wanted to do improvement work in their school, in their district, for their students, for their context, for their community. And they said, we think we can work with the Writing Project. What do you think? Well, there happened to be a funding source, just like now. And the district and these leaders and the Central California Writing Project directors sat down together and they developed a grant that was funded. It was a CPEC grant at the time, called Allies. Does education do acronyms better than almost anybody else? It's just ridiculous. Okay, so Allies, Alliance for Language and Literacy Instruction Affecting Students. Affecting meaning causing change, effecting, okay? But it was focused on everything that teacher leadership group had been working on for 10 years. And everything that the district identified as what they wanted to work on. So it was a grant that was going to fund intensive work in looking at the standards, working on college-ready writing, working on improvement tools, working on formative assessment tools, and developing teacher leadership, but more than that, developing educator leadership, because a really cool part of this project is that district, school, administrators, and teachers came together to make this work. So they took the best of what Michael Fullen calls top-down and bottom-up and blended a leadership development program that built on those. So, the characters and the setting and the context to this story. 50 teachers that swelled to about 75 by the end of the second year. 3 high schools, 5 middle schools, 1 alternative school, about 2.5 years of work, supported by writing programs at UCSC, community college folks, administrators, district and school level, all the teacher leaders, and these teachers came together to work. And what this graphic shows is a cycle, not just of planning, but of improvement and content development. Every single point, the leadership team, district leaders, school leaders, the writing project teacher leaders. The Pro-D planning group added in more teachers to this group. They met in weekend institutes. Every school had site workshops. The result of work, I mean, the work is just staggering. 11 weekend institutes, 47 site workshops, 12 Pro-D planning meetings, 9 leadership development meetings, leadership team meetings. An amazing amount of work. So the denouement, did they pull it off? They noticed that in year 1, lots more understanding of Common Core, lots more collaboration with school and district. But year 2, lots more targeted instruction for particular students, understanding of different levels, different needs, different strengths, and all of that became possible because of the writing assessment tools they were developing, the performance tasks they were developing and scoring, and the constant focus on assessment. And if Larry will give me an extra 40 seconds, okay? Improvement assessment is magic, and that's what made this program work. A lot of you work with rubrics, right? The usual rubric, be it 1 to 4, 1 to 6, 1 to 5. The 1s, 2s, and 3s, what's the language? These kids didn't. They didn't. Oh, they didn't do this either. They can't do that either. And then you turn over, and all of a sudden, they could do this, they could do this, they could do this. It's a horrible message for teachers and kids if you're working on improvement. So an improvement rubric instead says, here's the first thing the kids did right. Here's where they need to go next. Here's where they need to go next. It's all phrased in positive language. Guess what came out of this? College-ready writing lessons, materials, website of open resources, partner tools, and a new district writing assessment. Who would have thunk? And everybody owned it, and everybody felt like they had developed it. The prequel made it happen. Yeah? Not unusual either.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, definitely. As you're listening to these case studies, we hope that you're doing what comes naturally, and that is to make connections to your work, whether you're a classroom teacher working with a subject matter project or another professional learning organization, or as an administrator. And as I think about the work of the California International Studies Project and listening to Jane's story, I think of 3 key touch points for our work. And the first is, in working with teachers, she said they ask themselves, what is college-ready writing? What does that look like? And in the International Studies Project, we do the same. We ask, what does global citizenship look like for our students, for our teachers, for our community? The second point of contact is change. And while that prequel told a great story of a district working quite well, suddenly Common Core came in, and they had to be flexible and nimble and responsive to these changes. And again, that's what we do with the International Studies Project. We help students and teachers understand what change is about, how to appreciate change and respond to change in the most proactive way. And then finally, team. And that's something we heard this morning from Linda Darling-Hammond when she said, collaboration matters. So this team approach, understanding that teacher leadership doesn't happen in isolation or in a one-on-one situation, that it really takes a lot of those key players. So thank you, Jane. And with that, I'd like to now introduce our executive director from the California Mathematics Project, Kendall Brown, and he will share another example of teacher leadership.
Good afternoon. So I want to talk about how we in the Math Project identify, develop, and sustain teacher leaders. And the example that I'm going to be giving is from the UCLA Mathematics Project, because it's the project that I have the most experience with. Excuse me. So even though we, before the technological era, used to mail out flyers, and even now we send out emails, the primary form of recruitment is through word of mouth. Teacher leaders who've attended our leadership institutes go back to their schools, to their districts, to their organizations, tell them about the work and what they experienced in the Math Project, and that then is how people, the most people that we know about, come to our institute. So that's our primary form of identifying teacher leaders. Thank you. And then as we're recruiting people into our specific leadership institutes, we do have an interview process that we use to further screen people. But in terms of developing, it's through our leadership institutes where the focus is on content, pedagogy, and leadership. So we bring together university research mathematicians to help build teachers' content knowledge. We bring together mathematics educators who bring the most up-to-date research on pedagogy and instructional strategies, and then we bring classroom teacher leaders together to talk about what it means to be a leader in mathematics education. And we also apprentice our leaders, so we will pair a new leader with a more experienced leader when they're going out to do presentations, and so that's part of the way that some of the ways that we develop teacher leadership. In terms of sustaining teacher leaders, we offer a number of different content and pedagogy trainings, like cognitively guided instruction. If you take a look on the table out there, you'll see a flyer for an upcoming training that we're going to be having in Fresno on the new statistics standards that are part of the Common Core. And so we invite our teacher leaders to come and learn the most up-to-date content and pedagogical knowledge in the field. We have leadership retreats where we bring all of our leaders together to talk about, and we bring in speakers to talk about what are the latest trends in mathematics education. And then we also offer support for conference attendance and presentations. So those are some of the ways that we identify and develop and sustain teacher leaders. So now, if you take a look at this picture, everyone in this picture has been through the process that I just described. Some of them are classroom teachers who work for the project during the summer. Some of them have gone on to work in professional development organizations. Some of them have gone on to become math teacher educators at institutions. But I want to focus on the woman who's the furthest to the right in the multicolored kind of red and blue outfit. Her name is Maria Santos Fregosa. Now, Maria started as an administrative assistant with the UCLA Mathematics Project, helping to plan institutes and support them in handling all the fiscal and clerical management for the project. And while she was doing that, she went to get her undergraduate degree, and then she entered into the teacher education program at UCLA. When she finished the teacher education program, she attended a New Teacher Institute before her first year teaching. A new UCLA Math Project New Teacher Institute. Then after 3 years of teaching, she came back and attended our Teacher Leadership Institute. And since then, she's been doing professional development for the project during the summers. Now, in 2001, for those of you who can remember the California Professional Development Institutes, when we got all that funding to train teachers in the new standards, we got a huge grant to work with about 10,000 K-2 teachers in LA Unified School District. Now, at the time, the district was divided into these local regional districts, and so we hired Maria to come back and be one of the facilitators for one of the local regions where she was coordinating all of the professional development. And after all that funding was expended, then she went back into the classroom where she continues to be a classroom teacher and a teacher leader for the project. So those are just examples of how the California Mathematics Project identifies, develops, and sustains teacher leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. 3 legs of a stool: identify, develop, sustain. Also content, pedagogy, and leadership. And those are exemplified beautifully in the California Mathematics Project. For our next two vignettes, I'd like to introduce my colleague Diane Wilson-Graham, who is with the California Physical Education and Health Project.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce Deborah Costa Hernandez, who's the Executive Director of the California Reading and Literature Project.
Thank you, everyone. If we can go on, that's my team, right? So I'm going to talk about how we develop teacher leadership and build on teacher leadership in the California Reading and Literature Project, CRLP. And I'm going to just focus on something we do a little different. Our process of developing teacher leaders echoes what you've heard from the Writing Project and the Math Project, and from the other projects, and that they attend our presentations and then they continue to participate with us, and they go through an apprentice process to become presenters of our signature programs. But what I want to highlight for you today is actually something that we do almost at every regional site, which is a focus on teacher action research as a strategy or a tool to take what they learn in professional learning and help translate that into the classroom practice. And if you're familiar with teacher action research, raise your hand if you've heard that term before. Teacher action research is a process of reflecting. You have a question, you collect some data, you analyze that, you answer your question, and then in that analysis and in answering, other questions emerge, and you do that process again. So many, if not all of our sites at one point in time have done teacher or do teacher action research with their teacher leaders. And this idea is based on a very radical notion that educational leadership begins in the classroom. That educational leadership is being a good teacher. That's where you begin to be a teacher leader, by teaching what some people call teaching with integrity. Being the best teacher you can be, that is leadership. So I want to highlight Cal Lutheran University, because they took a different approach to developing and working on teacher action research. They went out and recruited or invited teams of teachers and their principals to participate. And they have 6 teams representing different schools where they were accepted in this. They had to go through an application process. And these teachers and their principals then committed to participate in this process for 2 years. They came in the fall, they learned some of the content and professional learning from the CRLP, and they learned about our framework for instruction and assessment, and they also learned these instructional routines and practices to support students in accessing complex text. Then they came back in the spring, over the summer, and they learned not only they have follow-up training on that content, but they also learn about action research and asking a question that can be answered in your classroom, and what does that look like. And so they came back, they share their data at a yearly fair with, you can see their display with their data and artifacts of what they've learned. And I just want to go to the next slide, because this is a quote from one of the teachers who participated in the 2-year process. And as a professional developer, we're happy when we see this as a reflection of, as a reaction of participating in one of our professional learning opportunities. But when you think of it as a reflection of, this is a leader in the classroom who feels pretty good about her practice and is going to share that with her colleagues, and is going to be a very powerful teacher, that it looks a little different, right? This is about leadership, not just about being satisfied with the professional learning opportunity that she had the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Like the Reading and Literature Project, the Physical Education and Health Project is centered around high-quality instruction so that students can learn. In each of our programs, all teachers have the opportunity to examine and develop the dispositions for accepting the role of teacher leadership. We think that's extremely important because of the leadership gaps that exist in our schools today. In fact, if anything, our favorite line to them is this: the driver's seat is empty. Get in. No one's there. Get in. And I think we use that line on a regular basis with teachers in all of our programs, both our summer institutes and our signature programs as well, giving them the opportunity to take their leadership role both in providing high quality instruction in physical education and health education, but also supporting the development of student literacy skills. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Maria Samante, who is the Executive Director of the California Science Project.
Thank you. My story involves a multi-year partnership between the Science Project and the school district in the East Bay. In this slide, you see, in this picture, you see Mina Parmar. She's the one on your right. And she's engaging here with a colleague during a summer program, and they are reviewing documents related to the next generation science standards. So there are a deeper level of analysis of these new science standards. Mina Parmar is an elementary teacher from Fremont Unified School District, and Mina has been involved with the California Science Project at the East Bay Science Project site since 2012-2013. And the uniqueness of this work is that previously the East Bay Science Project has been working with the Fremont Unified School District to develop content knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge associated with the next generation science standards for grade 6 to 8. And what the East Bay Science Project did was, we are not going to familiarize ourselves only with the next generation science standards, we are going also to infuse the Common Core literacy standards, that they were not on the radar for Fremont Unified School District for science teachers. So that was an integration that the East Bay Science Project was able to make, but the district did capitalize on that because after that project was coming to an end, they engaged again the East Bay Science Project and they entered this partnership for K-5 teacher, because if the science project was able to integrate science with literacy, maybe the science project can also integrate teachers that are traditionally strong in literacy skill, K-5 teacher, with the science. And so Mina entered the program as part of this partnership with the Fremont School District, designed to develop leadership capacity for K-5 level with a focus on the Common Core literacy for the K-5 science. And the partnership is really the key word here because it highlights the co-development of the expertise of both the science project and the district in response to a very specific need that the district found in the development of their teacher leaders. So, and the goal of the program with the Fremont School District was to ensure that this K-5 teacher had the reliable content knowledge to teach the science that is required by the next generation science standard, but also leverage and refine their existing pedagogical content knowledge and literacy skills for the science classroom. And so that elementary teacher could go beyond reading about science approach in their science classroom and really transform their instruction into inquiry-based and more practice-based science instruction. And so apart of this involvement with the science project program, Mina not only developed her own knowledge and became very familiar with the next generation science standards, but she's also moved from becoming teacher leaders at her school sites to become science specialist for the entire district in Fremont. She was one of the few that the district really saw how her curiosity, as you were mentioning, the capacity of reflection, the ability to work with others were so strong after the involvement with the science project that they wanted to elevate her to a much deeper role across the district. And so the outcome of this program was the development of these science specialists for the district that was not intended at the beginning. So what we are seeing now, Mina, a couple of years later into this program, is that now she is responsible for planning and coordinating integrated literacy science experiences for students in grade 3 to 6. So she expanded her level of grade expertise, and she has built a model for professional collaboration with teachers at their school sites to ensure that science is well supported, also within the context of English language development standards. And she focused the key instructional shift for her colleagues toward the integration of literacy instruction through science experiences for the development of the literacy skills of students. And because we cannot avoid working with Mina, and because we do want that our district district leaders to stay connected to our East Bay Science Project, Mina also continues to be a teacher facilitator with the East Bay Science Project. We can she further sustain in the development of her leadership skills as well as content knowledge alongside with our science content faculty. So it's really now becoming a partnership between teacher and faculty where all the pedagogical content knowledge that she has is given back to our content faculty at the university. Thank you.
Now we'll have a chance to learn a little more about collaborations with local school districts. I'd like to introduce Christine Alexander, the Executive Director of the California Arts Project.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Wiggle your shoulders a little bit, just to get some movement there. As you can tell, teacher leadership is at the heart of our projects. And one of the powerful ways, and there's many ways, as we've heard, that it comes about and is nurtured and sustained. And one of the powerful ways is through a partnership with a local school district. And I'm honored to have with me Jacqueline White today, Director of Arts and Career Arts. And we've had a journey that started, I think, back in about 2008. We're going to share a little bit about it, because I don't think we could have planned it. Nope. And it's been a learning experience for all of us, the project, and I believe for the district too. But in about 2008, Twin Rivers came into being. And up until that point, our regional site, we had teachers from the 4 districts. If you know the story of that district, there were 4 districts that merged. We had teachers in the arts coming from as individuals, and we had a little bit of work going on in those 4 districts. But when this happened, a whole new opportunity came to be for both where the district was envisioning what they needed to do with their single subject arts teachers and also their multiple subject elementary teachers. So 2 facets to this story, as well as with the administrators at that point. So maybe Jackie can share.
Sure. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for having us here. Let me share the story, because I think the work that we've done, I'm very proud of the work, and it certainly wouldn't have happened without partners in all areas of that partnership that were willing to work and make it happen. So as Chris said, at the time we kind of came into partnering. I was actually teaching at the time, and I was going to what is still called Pathways to Understanding the Arts by Design, a summer program that I was attending as a teacher in the district. As I came into a different role in the leadership in the district, we were also simultaneously merging. As she said, we were 4 districts, 3 elementary and 1 high school district, coming together as one happy family. And then also in a time of great fiscal cuts. So we were talking 2007, 2008. So things were pretty much about as bad as it could get. And of course, one of the things that went when we merged were our arts and music teachers. So we were kind of at this place of disparity. And this came in, and primarily the focus was around providing support for our elementary teachers. One of the things we developed at that point was trying to figure out where we wanted to go from there. So we worked, we can kind of piggyback
Sure.
back and forth on this.
And I think one of the goals that the district had was to address the equity and access issues they had across. You can imagine these communities, the parents, the students, different teachers, different administrations coming together to form something new. So it with the elementary, where most often classroom teachers do not have the content knowledge or the pedagogy, and they're afraid to teach the arts. That's where we needed to start with them. So we started with the Pathways program. And one of the pictures you saw earlier of all those teachers painting, that was from those early years. And with the single subject teachers, where we thought we were going to start.
Wasn't really where we could start, because there were some things that, you create a plan, and I was kind of taking notes at the very beginning when you were talking about some key things, and I wrote down build, team, evaluate, reflective and responsive, consistent, and accommodate. And we talk often in our district about that cycle of continuous improving. You plan, you do, you evaluate, revise, and really thinking that that was really the theme for where we were and where we have continued to be. Every time we thought, oh, this is the plan, oh, this is not the plan. So with our single subject teachers, because we had just merged, prior to the merge, they had already been asked to create new course syllabus and this whole new catalog. Well, the new district didn't want those. We'll just leave it at that. And so that we thought, okay, well, this would be a great opportunity to build team and collaboration, not so much. So before we could really do that, we had to sort of take that off. We had to start with building team, looking at our history, valuing the history, because again, 4 very different districts. We did have one district that had an elementary art specialist and one that did not. So there was nothing that was the same in any of these groups. So we had to first start there, building a team. And then we had to think about, where do we want to go? And that really came from asking them, where do you want to go? Where do you see this? What's your vision? And out of that allowed us to create a strategic plan. And then things sort of started to go from there. And we shaped that some more from there.
Right. There was a lot of hesitancy in the teachers to step forward. There wasn't really the trust yet. And I think one of the things, and there were also some changes happening at the district level that impacted and changed things. But as the project kept coming back and the teachers and the teacher leaders in our project became colleagues, all together, that trust began to build. And we can fast forward to
4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
The next kind of chapter in the journey. An opportunity came about for a grant.
A federal, we had an opportunity to write for a federal Department of Education Office of Innovation and Improvement grant, but it was a PDAE grant, so all around professional development for arts educators. And we looked at that and realized that we had some key things in place, and based on the fact that we'd been really working on team, talking to the teachers, we were able to think of the different levels to really create a sustainable arts program in our district. So we looked at administration, we looked at our single subject teachers and their teaching and pedagogy, and then supporting that multiple subject piece, because it is a key part to really making that arts integral to what they're doing every day. And so we were lucky, we got the grant, and even then, what we wrote wasn't exactly what we were able to do, again, plan, that cycle again. We've gone through that cycle again. Replan, that's right. But for me, to fast forward to even the last 2 years, what really happened was, because we made it so much about the teachers and what they needed and met them where they were, we valued the history, and we continually, said, hey, this isn't working, let's change, let's adapt. They have moved from a place of real reluctance to, I tease Chris and Armelin all the time. I say I have this real pride now of them, because 2 years ago, we offered a little area local professional development to about 175 teachers, and they all, whereas 4 years when we got the grant, I had to pull teeth for them to, literally, everything. It was like, we'll pay you, we'll do it during the day, and everyone came in the summer, and they were just all there. Till last year, they were coming and saying, can we lead the workshop sessions? We want to present to our colleagues. So,
and that's spilled over,
really
yes. Statewide in their professional orgs, the teachers are now sharing their work and their practice, and they're doing cutting edge work. They're engaging in inquiry, they're sharing, lesson study. It's amazing, it's amazing. And even now they joke, well, remember back. Yes, we remember back. So, and that's the single subjects time, and I see we're getting the time. There's more to the elementary, but you'll have to come back for the
part 2.
The part 2. So thank you for
Thank
letting
you.
us share.
So I want to thank you all, the whole team, and I think if you would give the whole team one round of applause. And also my fearless colleague who's in the back, Larry Corio. He is the CSMP coordinator and works closely with me, and he also made sure to keep us all on time. But he handles all of our analytics and our communications work and all of our computer work. So thank you, Larry, for all you do. So you just heard a really small sample of what CSMP does and who we are, and we could have spent the entire 75 minutes on just one project. As you can tell, there were lots more stories to tell, but we very intentionally did this with everybody up here because this is what CSMP is. This is who CSMP is, and as all the feedback on the teacher leadership question at the beginning, you heard about the continuous reflection, and you heard about assessment, developing assessment to really enhance and support student learning, and you heard about developing and sustaining teachers, leaders to stay in the profession, not to go somewhere else necessarily, but really continue to contribute to what education is and should be. You heard about action, research, and involving teachers and administrators to, again, really make sure that there's continuous improvement that's really informed by rigorous, systematic kind of inquiry into teachers' own practice. You heard a lot about collaborations and partnerships, and as everybody has said today, it's really critical to teaching and learning. You heard about how this work is tailored to the teachers' needs, to the schools' needs, to districts' needs, and really to connect it to the context that the local context and what everybody's dealing with on the ground. You heard about our connection to the university faculty who are generally discipline experts, and I will just say, and I may get in trouble because this is being recorded, but as I said, I work at UC. I also went to 2 different University of California campuses, undergraduate and graduate, and while they were brilliant professors that I had, teaching wasn't always their best quality. And so you heard in Maria's story about how this work has actually impacted the university faculty and our partners teaching, their teaching at the university level, which I will say is a good thing for all of my University of California professors and colleagues. And I hope you heard that we are really deeply committed to creating a collaborative professional home for all teachers. And that CSMP will be here throughout your career, hopefully, pending funding always. But and we really also, the reason we did this with everybody up here is that we sincerely believe that if any standards are going to be implemented successfully, it's going to take all teachers at all grade levels. So not just the math and English teachers, because those are the subjects that are tested, but every single teacher at every single school at every single grade level. And so we hope that you take away from this conversation that our belief is about supporting teaching and learning in a very authentic and collaborative way. So I want to just open it up. We have a few minutes for questions. We have 2 mics and people to help with getting those mics to you. There's a person back there, or Stacy. And we'd like you to use the microphone so it can be on the recording.
One of the questions that I had, because I remember being a teacher and very active in TCAP, and that really did inform my instruction, the arts piece. But I wanted to find out, where do you normally have your institutes? Because the level that I'm at, really trying to look at professional development for our teachers in the summer. And so it would be good, we already have identified a lot of teacher leaders, but how do I then direct them to some of these institutes and some of these content areas?
So I'll just say, as I said at the beginning, this is a statewide network, and so if you go, there's an information in your packet, you can go to the CSMP website, csmp.ucop.edu, and you will find programs all over the state. So we have the 9 projects, there's regional offices across the state, literally across the state, but then the 90 sites And they vary, the number of sites vary with projects. But if you go to the website, you'll see a listing of all of the projects, all of the statewide offices and the local sites and the program. So you can do a search on either by program or by region and find,
subject area.
Or subject area on the website and find out. And we have programs all year long. The most are probably in the summer, but they're literally, there are at least one program every month, I would say, throughout the year. So please feel free to contact. And if you have questions about them, there's contact information to contact directly, either site directors directly or the statewide offices directly. Other questions?
Yeah, I was curious about how you help teachers move from a lot of the stuff that looked like you do, the institutes and stuff, help them be really good teachers and be good at their content. And how do you help them become then leaders of that, to disseminate that information to their colleagues? What do you do to promote that or train them to do that?
So I'll let, if you, anybody can start, and then if you want to jump in, so it's just a couple of sentences from each of you or whoever wants to say something.
We in the Writing Project call our leadership programs, we call them continuity programs, because we think the work of leadership development is ongoing, and every new challenge demands an opportunity and support to step back, get some support, dig deep, especially, say, around the Common Core. You've been a leader for these other standards. What does it mean for these standards? So the one program I described, like the Improving Students' Analytical Writing, that's now an 18-year community, professional learning community. It's up to about 800 teachers who meet at different times to take a look at what does it mean to improve the writing of marginalized kids for college readiness. And they meet all year long. And every one of our 16 sites takes that support very seriously. And it's exactly what you described. How do you move from what I know in the individual classroom with my kids to how do I help teachers who are going to come work with me do that same thing, look at their classroom and know what to do? How do I help lead a program that enables them to do that? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to get updated as far as research, practices, assessments? And it's this amazing improvement cycle of learning that never quits. And rather than a burden, it's actually a good time.
Thanks, Jane. And Dort wanted to add something.
I can just say ditto, but in addition to that, we engage them in learning about adult learning theory. There's a whole body of research that prepares them for that. Change theory is very, very important for moving colleagues along and knowing when it's the right moment to strike there. Lots of reflection on their practice and being able to articulate the research behind their practice and being able to explain rationally to their colleagues, as well as sharing an activity, but also being able to tie the research to that particular activity. So that's part of our leadership development, at least in our project as well, and everything else that Jane said.
And so one of the things that we tried to do, particularly at the UCLA site, was to build leadership opportunities into our program. So we have this annual Leadership Institute. We held 2 slots open for what we call leadership facilitators, and we would choose 2 participants from the previous year's institute to come back to the next year's institute to be those leadership facilitators to help develop their leadership capacities. And I mentioned this project, this contract that we have with LA Unified to train all of their K-2 teachers. What we were able to do, that happened in about 2001. The UCLA Math Project started around 83. So we had about a database of about 200 people who had attended our leadership institutes. We were able to draw upon those 200 participants to train them to go out and be the facilitators in those institutes in LA Unified School District. So we try to build that these leadership opportunities for people into the programs that we design.
Anybody else?
In the International Studies Project, teacher leadership looks different in different situations. Some of our teacher leaders are very good at curriculum development. Some are very good at leading those professional learning communities at their own school site with the support of the research that they get by coming to our programs. And others want to lead those workshops or lead those institutes from planning to facilitation or presentation, all the way into the classroom, following their colleagues to serve as coaches. So with our project, there's lots of, and the others as well, there's lots of opportunities to be a teacher leader.
Anybody else? Okay, Debbie.
So we're going down the line. So, for our project, we echo the opportunities that are provided, embedded in the programs, but there's something about collaborating around samples of student work and the credibility that you get when you say, here's the type of work that I'm getting from my students as a result of me implementing these practices that I learned, that I've been grappling with as professional development. And so that gets teachers' attention. So when Kendall talked about of all the modern ways to reach people out there, we still rely a lot on the word of mouth. That's the kind of word of mouth that brings other teachers into our professional learning opportunities, because maybe initially you get some of those teachers that always want to learn are the first ones to participate, but when they come back and they share what they learned and they implement throughout the year and they do action research and they start sharing what their students who look like the students in the other class are able to do as a result of what the teacher is doing differently, then you get another wave of teachers coming in, because we believe that every teacher wants the best for their kids and they want to be the best teacher possible. So eventually they come.
I would like just to add one type of experience that is occurring often to me in Riverside and the region around, where we are creating this program to develop teacher leaders, but often then they are not allowed to go back to their school and display that leadership with their colleagues. So what we often have to do is to enter the school and do programs at the school site with the aid of the teacher leaders, and we are the one positioning the authority of this teacher in front of all their colleagues, and in this way the teacher gets recognized as the go-to person for certain type of activities and knowledge delivery. So that is an interesting approach that we constantly have to do in certain situations where the district doesn't really want to recognize the value of the teachers that they do have already in their school and district.
So other questions from you all? Okay, we'll take the last question back there in the back.
This is a specific question for Mr. Brown. You mentioned a conference that was going to be held in Fresno. Is that correct? And when is that going to occur?
It's going to be, the focus of the Institute is on the middle school statistics standards. There's a lot of new statistics standards in the middle school. Middle school teachers aren't feeling comfortable teaching to those standards, and so we developed resources that focused on statistics and English language development. And so that's going to be in Fresno, at the Fresno County Office of Education, February 29th, March 1st. And there's flyers on the table for you, or you can go to our website and get more information. Please share.
Yes, and the website has, as I said before, that program and all of our other programs that are available to all teachers and any educator that is interested in learning about content, pedagogy, equity and access around teaching and learning, and professional development and leadership. So again, I want to thank the panel. Thank you. Thank you. And we talked a lot about this and about the importance of recognizing teachers as teachers, learners, and leaders all the time. The teachers play that role constantly, and so we want to thank all of the teachers out here for all you do. And I loved Linda's quote about, or what she said about, teaching is the profession upon which all other professions depend. And so we thank you for your work, we thank you for being here, and please feel free to contact us anytime. Thank you.
Yeah.